Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Fin Virtual Learning Series segment on connecting to our coworkers and why it matters. Bienvenue à cette séance de la série d'apprentissage virtuel du RGFF sur la connexion avec nos collègues et pourquoi elle est importante. I'm your host, je suis votre animateur, Paul Keller, Project Manager at the Quebec Federal Council's Innovation Lab and co-lead of the FlexGC Network. I'd like to begin this event by acknowledging that I'm here on the traditional unceded territory of the Wendat Huron Nation, also known as Quebec City, and I encourage all of you to acknowledge the land that you're on as well. J'aimerais commencer cet événement en reconnaissant que je suis ici sur le territoire traditionnel non cédé de la nation Huron-Wendat, aussi connu sous le nom de Québec, et je vous encourage tous à reconnaître le territoire sur lequel vous êtes aussi. As we move through today's session, please share your comments in the chat space and questions in the language of your choice by using the Q&A button. You'll find that on your interface. If not, perhaps Marcella, who is available in the chat, can help you out. You can vote for questions you like by clicking on the thumbs up button. Veuillez partager vos commentaires dans l'espace de clavardage et vos questions dans la langue de votre choix en utilisant le bouton Q et A. Donc, Marcella, qui est derrière là, dans le chat, pourra vous aider si vous ne le trouvez pas. Vous pouvez voter pour les questions que vous aimez en cliquant sur le bouton du pouce vers le haut. Today, we have two panelists joining us. I'd like to welcome Tammy Drew, Manager at Indigenous Services Canada, and Jennifer Harju, Senior Analyst at NRCan. So here we go. La recherche démontre que les gens privilégient généralement la gentillesse, la fiabilité et la moralité plus que les compétences pour ce qui est des relations avec leurs collègues. Lorsque ces aspects n'existent pas, les individus seront moins susceptibles de poser des questions ou d'interagir de la manière requise pour un travail d'équipe, ainsi que pour optimiser l'apprentissage. Donc, il est probable que si vous vous sentez psychologiquement en sécurité dans votre environnement, vos collègues le ressentent aussi. And in English, research has shown that people typically prioritize warmth, trustworthiness, and morality over competencies in colleague relationships. Where these aspects do not exist, individuals are less likely to ask questions or interact in ways required for optimal teamwork and learning. It is likely that if you feel psychologically safe in your environment, your coworkers do too. So we'll turn it over to our panelists, Jennifer and Tammy. Start off with the first question here. Qu'entend-on par une connexion dans le milieu de travail? What does workplace connection mean? And Jennifer, I'll hand it over to you first.
Thank you, Paul. Yeah, for me, workplace connection is really feeling like I belong. Belong as part of a team, as part of an organization, and that I'm supported and that I can contribute to supporting my colleagues. So pretty simple, but that's what it means to me.
Donc, Jennifer qui dit que pour elle, être connectée, c'est de se sentir comme si elle appartient à quelque chose, donc appartient à son équipe, son organisation. Tammy, how about you?
That seems to be more of a loaded question for me. Connection, I cannot do work connection or personal connection without going back to what I've been taught by my elders as an Indigenous person about connection to the Creator, to Mother Earth, to myself, most importantly, my authentic self. And I'll be the first one to admit, before remote work in the pandemic, my authentic self wasn't fully seen at the office, where now there's more glimpse of it on the remote working. So, and that has actually helped with making connection with my teams, just being my authentic self and connecting to self, land, spirit, and my people.
Donc, être connecté finalement avec les gens, elle parle beaucoup des traditions qu'elle a adoptées au travers là, de sa vie là, avec sa communauté autochtone, entre autres. Parle du fait que c'est l'authenticité qui est la clé. Donc, Jennifer, maybe hand the second question over to you. How can we work towards building connections with our colleagues? Donc, comment pouvons-nous travailler à établir des liens avec nos collègues?
Oui, pour moi, pour établir les liens avec nos collègues durant la pandémie, j'ai préparé mes notes parce que français est mon troisième langue, alors je ne suis pas parfait, je m'excuse. Mais c'est important de rester en contact régulièrement en utilisant les outils électroniques qu'on a maintenant. Par exemple, mon équipe utilise beaucoup le MS Teams pour la fonction de chat et aussi on utilise Slack aussi qui est une autre plateforme pour rester en contact, pour bavarder et on pouvait bavarder des choses au lieu de travail, mais aussi les choses moins formelles, les choses informelles. Aussi, on fait des réunions d'équipe souvent et je pense que c'est aussi important d'avoir des activités qui sont un peu plus amusantes que les réunions. Alors, on organise les petits événements comme du trivia ou une chasse de trésors pendant le dîner. Et je pense que si vous êtes un nouveau employé, par exemple, et si tu veux faire de bénévole au travail, vous pouvez organiser les activités et ça va être très apprécié par toute l'équipe. Oui.
Super.
Et ça augmente l'esprit de l'équipe. Alors.
Oui, tout à fait. And I agree with you. So basically, what Jennifer's saying is the importance of staying in touch regularly, leveraging collaborative tools that we have access to. She talked about Microsoft Teams, Slack, not only talking about work, talking about informal stuff as well, doing fun activities, quizzes. And you also talked about volunteer work, which I found interesting. So basically rallying around volunteer work, I guess, to create connections. So cool. And Tammy, what about you? How do you best stay in touch with colleagues, especially in this virtual context?
I've had the opportunity where, in a small region in the Atlantic, that we all knew each other when we went remote for the first year. Then I became an EX and I took on more of a team that I didn't work regularly with, knew them, but didn't. So what I found worked was some one-on-ones, the 110% listening when I am talking to them. And when there is a story that they want to tell, to make myself available. And that does not mean, head a line and if it's something work related, then I would turn it around and include their supervisor, but it's just important to listen. That is what I found at works when bringing on new staff, new teams, and all the things that Jennifer said, they're fun. So it's balanced.
Donc, une emphase sur l'écoute. Tammy qui dit qu'elle écoute à 110%. Elle laisse la place aux gens qui ont des choses à compter. Donc, c'est ça, laisser la place, giving space. Super duper. Next question, I'm going to throw over to Tammy. Qu'est-ce que l'empathie et comment contribue-t-elle à la dynamique d'équipe? So what is empathy and how does it contribute to team dynamics?
Yeah, it's really connected to the last little bit I talked about. Now, empathy and sympathy, and just for in case nobody's ever looked up the definition, but my interpretation of the definition is sympathy is you feel like you understand their feelings. Empathy is when you can put yourself in their place. Now, when you can put yourself in their place because you've experienced something similar, or if you haven't, but you take some time and you imagine using your visual cues and your memories of what you must feel like if you had this experience that they're going through. And it wasn't, if I can share just a little bit of an experience I had recently like that you don't take, or I took something for granted and you shouldn't take for granted. I had an opportunity to speak to an officer, program officer, probably a PM3 or PM4. So not someone I supervise regularly. And we were just getting conversation, and she had mentioned something. And I said, I understand, and I know what you feel, because my dad had just passed away in May, and I shared what I was going through. And she emailed me the next day and told her that just me knowing and understanding and knowing that a director was feeling and working through the same things alone in a pandemic, that she didn't feel alone, and it gave her another chance to make a plan to handle stress, handle work at home, different things. So it's about that. It's the listening and the sharing.
Totally. Donc, super intéressant. Donc, Tammy qui fait la différence entre la sympathie et l'empathie. Donc, sympathie étant la capacité d'identifier, si on veut, ce que quelqu'un vit, mais l'empathie, vraiment la ressentir. Et donc, une des façons de finalement établir l'empathie ou développer de l'empathie, c'est vraiment d'imaginer, de visionner, prendre le temps là, de s'imaginer réellement ce que la personne vit. Tammy compte une histoire aussi de comment elle parlait avec un employé à un certain temps, et Tammy qui lui dit qu'elle passe au travail les mêmes choses, et donc ce sentiment-là, l'employé qui l'a recontacté le lendemain pour lui dire que ce sentiment-là de savoir que quelqu'un d'autre passe au travers des mêmes choses là, a beaucoup aidé finalement à passer au travers. So super interesting stuff. Tammy, I'll throw another one over to you. Nous avons entendu des histoires de personnes qui changent de service, bien qu'elles aiment leur équipe, elles ont du mal à se sentir connectées. Donc, ils changent de ministère plutôt. Ils ont du mal là, à se sentir connectés. Donc, comment est-ce que les gens peuvent-ils vivre, peuvent-ils mieux connaître leurs équipes, c'est-à-dire? And in English, we've heard stories from people changing departments. And although they like their team, they find it difficult to feel connected. So how can people get to know their team better?
Yeah, and I'll just expand with my theme I've been talking about on this one. It's the listening and the sharing. It is, having team meetings. It is one-on-one meetings when we're being available. And you have to make your boundaries. Yes, you can't be 100% vulnerable when you're leading a team or a part of a team. We all have responsibilities in helping each other out. I have asked an individual at level or even or below the new person coming on, or the new team being created in some cases, to onboard someone and to share. So they have all those technicalities. And it's not just that, though. It's because you don't have that opportunity, as you know now, to go to the CR4 next door and say, like, what's this happening? What's happening? Or go to the manager, go to the director. I started as an EX1 in this pandemic, as I said earlier. What I have found in building trust in this environment, and that is the key, is the 110% listening. It is making myself vulnerable to show my true self, 100% of it. And the best thing that I would recommend anybody who's losing that connection is to ask for help. Someone that you feel that you can have a connection. It may not be in your sector, your director, or whatever pillar that you define yourself as in your department, but to build trust with someone, to ask for help. That I've done it myself. I've been available to my team or other teams.
Super. So, again, une emphase sur l'écoute, le partage, les conversations, c'est-à-dire bilatérales, one-on-one, comme on dit en anglais. Donc, de ne pas se montrer vulnérable à 100%, mais quand même, là, pour bâtir la confiance, l'écoute à 110%, Tammy qui remet de l'emphase là-dessus, parle aussi que si on perd cette connexion avec les gens, de ne pas se gêner de demander de l'aide, donc d'en parler. yeah, like the people do feel isolated sometimes in this context. You know, I know that in my team, what we like to do is have sort of like a buddy system where, you know, somebody who's onboarding will actually have someone who's available for them, you know, use different channels to communicate and yeah, you know, just try to create more real relationships within the team. Totally. So Jennifer, throw this next question over to you. Some people miss the real life connections they had with others when they weren't part of a dispersed team. How can they build connections in other ways? Donc, les liens présentiels que les gens avaient lorsqu'ils ne faisaient pas partie d'une équipe dispersée manquent à certaines personnes. Comment peuvent-elles établir des liens par d'autres moyens?
Oui, merci. J'aime beaucoup les réponses de Tammy aussi, c'est relié. Oui, mais c'est vrai, pendant la pandémie que nous a forcé de travailler de la maison et cela avait rendu le contact physique impossible et maintenant c'est toujours difficile de faire les connexions en personne. Mais aussi, cela nous a permis d'être plus créatifs et aussi de trouver les autres façons de rester en contact. Je pense que c'est très important de faire les pauses café avec les collègues et une à la fois, juste pas les réunions d'équipe, pas juste les réunions d'équipe, mais les pauses café vraiment pour bavarder avec ton collègue, ton ami de travail. C'est très important et d'avoir cette connexion plus personnelle. Je pense que ça aide tout le monde d'avoir ces connexions-là. Aussi, nous pouvons faire les choses, comme j'ai dit avant, les choses plus amusantes que les réunions d'équipe, comme vous pouvez organiser les 5 à 7 peut-être. Et comme les réunions virtuelles sont un peu plates à fois, où les personnes ne disent rien, je pense que c'est très important d'avoir un thème, par exemple. Et nous pouvons concentrer sur le thème. On a des thèmes comme comment on prendre soin de nous-mêmes, peut-être en peut parlant comment nous pouvons appuyer les autres, ça c'est très important, mais aussi les thèmes fun comme les histoires de nos vacances préférées, par exemple, ou les vacances qu'on rêve de faire après la pandémie, par exemple. Juste pour avoir un peu plus de fun, informel, les conversations qui sont, oui, moins formelles. Je pense que c'est très important.
Je suis totalement d'accord. Puis, c'est ça, des fois, on est tellement sur un horaire serré au niveau des réunions que parfois, on met ces conversations-là de côté. Mais je suis d'accord que c'est important d'avoir un espace pour pouvoir parler de ces choses informelles-là. So, Jennifer, who talked about, you know, having coffee chats, like we like to call in French the 5 à 7, so happy hours, you know, and having themes for virtual meetings. So she talked about, you know, theme of how to take care of yourself, but also different themes like what was your best vacation, or what's the vacation you want to do when you get out of COVID. So basically having some different subjects than the typical work subjects. And yeah, I might chime in on that one just a little bit. Like in my team, we have 15-minute meetings every Monday. So this is like a super rapid fire check-in where we just, you know, say what we're doing for the rest of the week. And then we've got the longer meeting on Friday where we can, you know, have space for that kind of conversation. So like, I think as an employee and within your team, there's always a way of, you know, trying to establish what's the best format, you know, what's the best meeting format for us to feel connected, right? So absolutely. Yeah, go ahead, for sure. Go ahead.
Oui, j'ai oublié quelque chose. I want to challenge everyone to make a coffee date with 5 of your colleagues and one-on-one, not a group coffee date. Alors, je vous défie d'organiser des réunions personnelles avec vos collègues. 5 dans les semaines qui viennent. So 5 personal coffee meetings with your colleagues. You know, you can each bring your favorite drink and just have a chat, 15-minute pause café avec les collègues.
Sounds good. I will try that myself. Unfortunately, at the lab, there are only 4 of us, so like I don't have 5 colleagues, but but yeah, we'll try our best to get it done, Jennifer. So hey, we do have a few questions in the Q&A here. I'm not sure I understand the first one. This is why are there more glimpses now, Tammy? It seems like it would have been the opposite now. So I don't know if you understand the context of that question, Tammy. If not, I'll maybe move over to the second one. It says, what can I do as an employee to help build team spirit? I find it can be difficult as different people have different levels of knowledge on tech. So any ideas on that? Because it's totally true. You know, sometimes you have teams that are really tech savvy, you know, and other times they're less, individuals that are often insecure about tech, right? And so it's not that they don't want to, they just don't know where to start. So basically, you know, maybe go ahead, Jennifer.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, then keep it really simple. I think everyone now is really used to using Zoom or used to using Teams. So just make it as simple as that. Like I said, have a meeting with a theme. Tell us a funny story about your vacation, or tell us your dream vacation for when the pandemic ends. You know, just something really, really basic. So you don't need any extra technology. We also did things like a scavenger hunt over lunch, where like someone emailed the list of things and then told us who were our teammates. And then we had to go and find those things and then come back at a Zoom meeting and tell people what we found or what we didn't find. And it was just fun. And I mean, it takes some organization, but it was definitely fun.
Tammy?
I'll just add that I'm raising my grandson, so he helps me with non-governmental tech. Governmental tech, the IT team that is in my directorate is great. But you know what? I get more phone calls now from a lot of people that are not comfortable. So phone, just like when I was a teenager in the 80s, I'm on the phone sometimes unexpectedly. And you should not discredit that. If someone's more comfortable using a telephone, just to be available for each other.
Oui, donc Jennifer qui parle de garder les événements simples, donc de ne pas trop s'appuyer sur les outils technologiques, faire des activités de fun. Elle parle d'une chasse au trésor qu'elle a fait avec ses collègues. Et Tammy, par la suite, en fait, ça m'échappe ce qu'elle a dit, je suis vraiment désolé. Tammy, I was unable to translate what you said because I forgot. I'm sorry. Yeah. So let's move over to the next question that we have. Talked about water cooler conversation. So I think we kind of addressed that, you know. I have heard of people actually taking walks. No, while on the phone. And yes, this actually comes back to me what Tammy just said about the phone. Le téléphone, c'est quelque chose qu'on oublie parce qu'on est tellement dans Microsoft Teams puis les vidéoconférences. I realized like a few weeks ago, I was trying to get Teams to work. It wasn't working. I had to call someone. We were connecting. It was like the other person was like, why don't you just call me? And I'm like, oh, yeah, that's right. We can still do that. So yes, totally. And speaking of the phone, I've heard of people having actual walks. You know, so they'll each have a walk at the same time and have that chat while they're having a walk. Donc, des marches en même temps que discuter au téléphone, ça s'avère être quelque chose d'assez intéressant comme activité finalement. Puis je pense qu'il y a moyen de se connecter avec les gens en faisant ce genre de choses-là. So move over to the next question. Okay, we've got, what are tools or some of those fun things we can include in our meeting? So, don't know if anybody wants to go. I have an idea. We were just talking about it, like the fact that there are people that are comfortable and people that aren't with technology. Sometimes creating a fun activity on, say, a collaborative whiteboard, you can actually help people who are uncomfortable with that. Instead of having a high pressure brainstorming session for the first time on a whiteboard, if you do like a simple activity just for fun, then you take off the stress factor for these people who have a bit more difficulty with these tools. Donc, faire des activités là, plus plaisantes par l'entremise d'un tableau collaboratif en ligne, par exemple, peut faire en sorte que des gens qui sont moins à l'aise avec la technologie vont être plus ouverts à apprendre dans un contexte qui est moins stressant, si on veut. Donc, that's one of the ideas that I have. Besides that tool, yeah, go ahead, Jennifer.
Oh, no. Okay, yes, sure. So I was just going to say, when new colleagues join the team, and I'm working at the Clean Growth Hub, which is shared by NRCan and ISED, and we're only about 20 people, but there is a lot of movement of people coming and going. So when a new person joins, we always have a team meeting to welcome them. And we do 2 games, well, one or the other, usually 2 truths and a lie. So beforehand, someone gathers, you say 3 things about, like each person says 3 things about themselves, and one of them is not true. And so we share the screen, we put it up on the screen. Okay, this is Jennifer, and she does this, this, and this. Which one isn't true? And then everyone guesses, and then you say which one isn't true. And you learn something about the person that you definitely wouldn't have learned otherwise. So it's interesting. And also we do beforehand 5 questions, like, I don't know, your favorite food, what you do well, what you don't do well. We did once a hit song, the year you were born, but that gives away your age, so I don't know if that's a good one. Things like that. Anyways, 5 questions to get to know everyone, and then you put the answers up on the screen when you're sharing screen, and people have to guess who said those answers. And again, you really learn things that you would not have learned about your colleagues. So it's kind of fun.
Super. Donc, Jennifer qui propose des jeux, 2 vérités et 1 mensonge. Donc, il y a les personnes qui mettent 2 phrases qui sont des vérités et 1 phrase qui est un mensonge, et le groupe doit tenter de découvrir quel est le mensonge. Et l'autre, c'est 5 questions finalement que tout le monde répond. Et par la suite, basé sur les réponses, on doit deviner qui le fait. So again, I mean, this is the kind of thing that you can try integrating, a technological tool into this exercise, a whiteboard or a platform such as Easy Retro that you can actually vote and stuff. So all sorts of stuff out there. You just gotta research it and be patient with people who are around you that maybe aren't as agile in that field, technology. Tammy.
Just wanted to add, because something, I don't know if it's unique to our department because it's ISK, but we do have cultural moments as well, and smudging circles on Monday and Fridays. And I've been asked now to lead a few songs that, or shared a few songs that I do know from my culture with other people from Mi'kmaq or Maliseet area. So it's not, before this, it was something that was there, but bringing spirituality and culture into the workplace, I've only seen it in this format as strong and as regular. So that is an improvement, and maybe something that somebody else is open to.
Nice. Hey, Tammy, just so I can translate this properly, I've never heard of a smudging circle. What is that?
So it's with sweetgrass or with sweetgrass. So I would burn the sweetgrass. Maybe I've seen helders come in. Sometimes they smudge the computer, so we do that. And people would have a talking circle format. So if there was something bothering them or something about work that they just wanted to talk about, but it's been a lot happening since the pandemic. It's with the Truth and Reconciliation and in Indian residential school. So it's open to everyone and people can come and just express some feelings in a more, not religious, but spiritual, grounded way.
Super. Donc, Tammy qui parle des activités culturelles, des moments culturels, donc des activités, des cercles finalement de partage, n'est-ce pas? On parle aussi des activités autour de la chanson, Tammy qui partage des chansons de ses racines finalement. Alors, super intéressant. Let's go over to the Q&A, see if anything has popped up. Okay, so someone went and added some information for that first question. So Tammy was talking about her authentic self and how she's brought more of that now in a remote versus before. And yes, I heard that too. And I'm really interested to hear on what you have to say about that. So why is this?
Oh, I don't know. Maybe it's because of that conditioning from being in the school and everything, the professional self. I get, big jewelry when I get difficult conversations, those little tools that I had, and dress for success. You all hear that. I've come to meetings now, my bottom half being pajamas because I'm having a rough day and hard to get the grandson out the door. So, and when they look at me, I can't always transition because I'm in my home. Like that's just the hard mornings, hard days. I should say leggings, not pajamas. I should say that. But anyways, I won't admit it to my boss. But my authentic self, you just saw it there. That was me explaining myself too much, my goofiness, my who I am as a spiritual person. I'm not a spiritual leader, but I'm a spiritual person. So that's who I bring now. It's not the big jewelry, I gotta have difficult conversations today. I gotta make sure I'm on point, eyebrows, dress. It's about who I am today.
That's really interesting, especially in this context of this event, we're talking about how to connect with people. Donc, Tammy qui parle de comment son côté authentique est encore plus ressorti dans un monde virtuel, juste du simple fait qu'elle est dans son environnement chez elle. Parle du fait que des fois le haut c'est une belle parure, mais le bas c'est peut-être des pantalons un peu moins adaptés au travail. Donc oui, and I'd add to that, like we've all a lot of us learned about the other people's environment, so they've seen the dog, they've seen the kids, they know about the daily routine. So yeah, I find that really, really interesting. Our authentic selves have come out more during the pandemic. And I think you're right. Absolutely. So let's head over to the Q&A again. So we talked about the tools section. So I don't know if people were looking for specific tools, but I can maybe talk to you about that afterwards. My personal favorite, concept board. I love that tool. It's a virtual whiteboard that you can use, but there are all sorts of others. Let's see what we have here. I find it interesting that people prefer warmth over competence in relationships. It really made me think. Yeah. Yeah, do you folks have any comments on that particular comment? I've spoken before about debranding at an event here and how, this whole pandemic context has, brought us a bit more to our roots in that, like, we're maybe more involved with local businesses, encouraging local businesses more. We're looking for, in this overload of information, information that we have, emails, social media, we're looking, as humans, we're sort of like tired of that saturation, and we're actually looking for things that are real, and so I think that that comment, plays into that a little bit, and that, just go back and read it. And I'm having trouble opening my screen here. I find it interesting that people prefer warmth over competence. So I just think that we're in a period where we're wanting to, have things that are real and not superficial so much anymore. We're just kind of tired of it because we've been in that mode for a few years now, So that's pretty much it. I don't see any more questions in the Q&A. Did you, Tammy and Jennifer? We still have some time, but listen, can maybe go with some final thoughts while we're waiting for questions to pop in.
I wanted to, because I read that too, that warmth versus, I don't look at it. I can't even remember the phrase now, but warm over competencies. And I looked at that because I was like, what? Well, after reading it a couple of times, I just wanted to share what it meant to me. And then that's just it. It may mean something else to someone else. But I've always heard you can train anyone to do any job, right? So it's not that competencies are not important. You got to be able to fix a computer. You got to be able to transfer to GCs. You got to have that. But for me, the warmth part of it comes in where there's more one-on-one, there's more patience to get through getting those things done and building competencies. When it comes to a person not able to meet that competency, because in my past career, and I was 45 years on my reserve before I moved here to Hammers. And I was the band manager in my community. So a lot of times we end up putting people in jobs that can't raise to that competency. So then you need warmth as well to work with them or help them find a place. So that's how it meant to me. And it's not one or the other, but it's again connected. That's all it meant to me.
Jennifer, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it's very similar to what Tammy was saying before about bringing her authentic self to work more. And I think the pandemic has been really interesting in that way, in that we are stripped down a bit, right? We're not in the office. We don't have to put on that office persona or that office face. And so, yeah, you do see a lot more realness, I find, which is it's really nice. It's really refreshing. And it's also really much more inclusive too of, before we can't imagine what it's like to be a regional staff, or, now it's sort of a more level playing field for a lot of people. So I think that that's been really a good advantage in the pandemic as well. But yeah, that authenticity, I think people are, because we don't have as many in-person contacts, we seek that authenticity. And if people are authentic at work and if they're caring, that's the boss you love. Tammy sounds like she would be an amazing director, right? She cares about people. And that's so much more important than, getting the work done is also really important, but that heart, bringing the heart to work is amazing.
Bringing a heart to work makes your staff want to get the job done, It comes down to that too. Donc, Tammy qui parle, quand on pose la question, là, ce que ça évoque, c'est que les gens, en fait, peuvent apprendre n'importe quoi. Donc, les compétences sont, qu'elles les ont ou non, ce qui importe le plus, c'est la chaleur de la personne. And I go as far as to say the attitude, attitude over competency, parce que on travaille dans un contexte où on veut être axé sur les personnes, right? We want to be human-centered in our approach for all sorts of reasons. whether it be retention, the workforce right now, there's less and less people available. So, I mean, at the end of the day, you want to have, people who want to come into work and want to be there, right? And the way to do that is to be, authentic and so voila. Let's go back to the Q&A. Might have some more stuff here. Okay, so I have read that having a best friend at work is good for your mental health. Should you be friends with colleagues, or is that a conflict? It's an interesting one.
I do have friends at work. I think it really depends. I mean, you can read people, right? If they want to maintain that kind of professional relationship, I think it's important to respect that. But then there are some people that you really connect with. And, just the other week, someone invited us to see her farm. And, a few of us went and we pat the horses and we held the chickens. And it was just like really lovely. So I think it really depends on each person and people's comfort levels, right? But I have made a lot of friends at work and still are in touch with people from past workplaces. So I think you can definitely be friends with your colleagues, and that it's not a conflict of interest, but everyone has their own personal comfort levels. Tammy?
Yeah, it's a little bit more difficult to be friends with your direct reports. You have to be able to switch your hats. And often at times when you are absolutely honest and you are managing and friends with your colleagues, the line has to be drawn sometimes. And if you are in a relationship or friendship where they understand, they respect your position and you respect their position, then it works. I've had many more that didn't work, and maybe even more before I joined a public service, because now at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, I'm like, I don't see anybody at the grocery store where I would on my reserve, right? So, but the other thing I wanted to say, and my brain is going there now, is that behavior, right? So if I have a friend at work and I'm managing them or not managing them, and they go through a process and get into the pool and get acceptance. I've had, those comments where, oh, that's because she's friends with the director or friends with the manager. But I know in my heart of hearts that I didn't do anything unprofessionally wrong. So that is what I've always looked at, is that I can be my authentic self. At the same time, I have to respect people's positions. I have to respect my position. I am accountable just like everybody else, and more so, probably 24/7 now. And it's just being mindful of that. And I don't want to make it simplistic because it takes practice, honest to God, it do. But again, I'm probably got PTSD from working in a community for 25 years where I switch my hat, and then the counselor is my boss, and then there's my friend, and then I'm invited to their house for supper. But it's not like a glass fishbowl. But if you're in a region, it sometimes is, it still is. So be mindful, be professional. There is a line. Always think about the impact of your behavior. You're allowed to have your personality and your attitude. It's the impact of what you choose to say and do, because words matter.
Super interesting. Donc, Jennifer qui parle, que c'est déjà arrivé à plusieurs reprises, là, qu'elle est amie avec des collègues, parle même là, d'une visite d'une ferme d'un ou une collègue. Et Tammy qui dit que c'est possible, mais il faut faire attention lorsqu'il s'agit des gens qui se rapportent directement. Donc, c'est important parfois de fixer des limites et de comprendre aussi l'impression que certaines gens peuvent avoir. Donc, si, par exemple, dans le cadre d'un processus, là, la personne qui est son amie a la job, ben, ça peut créer un petit peu de questionnement de la part de certaines personnes, et donc il faut quand même être sensible à ça. Donc, absolutely, very interesting. So I guess, we just talked about limits. Have you ever been too connected to your colleagues?
You'd have to ask them. No, I've had some embarrassing moments. Yes, I have. I've learned from them. That's all you can do, right? And that comes, I think, like if I think about waking up at age 43 and going, I'm really, I'm putting myself first. But you know what? My children in their 20s did that. And maybe my grandson will do it before. And so limits, I can laugh at myself. I don't know where I went with that answer, but I can laugh at myself and just learn from it. And so too much connection when it impedes. Okay, this is coming to me now. When it impedes your personal space, just like as if you were in the office. That's probably the best answer. Everything else I had to get through the fluff to get to that answer. Sorry, Jennifer.
Good.
No, I think it's all good. I think I do recall a few instances where, yes, there can be too much information shared, because work friends are still work friends. Like it's a certain level. It's not like your best friend so there have been times where I've been wondering like, oh, I don't know if you should be sharing all of this information with me. Or times where the person is sharing information, but that information, it needs to be shared with the manager, or it needs to be shared with a union, like important information that I don't have any power to do anything about, but I have to advise, like, I really think you should seek support from your union, or I really think you should seek support. What's the counseling group called again? Our counseling.
PSP in French, EAP.
Yes. EAP, yes, employment, employee assistance program. So for things like that, I mean, you do have to know your limits too, right? Like I'm not a counselor, and what you're telling me really needs someone to help you. So please seek these supports. So yeah.
Yeah, and I'm a very, very transparent person. So Jennifer, I'm probably the dude that you're talking about who might have shared too much information. The only added benefit I see, like, to being, your true self and saying things as they are, is that, we were talking about empathy earlier, right? And so if you're going through something and it's affecting your work, but you're not sharing anything, it's extremely hard for individuals in your team, right, or your managers, to develop empathy towards your situation if they have no real human information on what's going on, right? So it's a fine balance, as you can say, because you don't want to give too much, but you have to give enough for these people to truly understand your situation, and give an opportunity to your team to, help you out in these types of situations. So yeah, let's go over to go, Jennifer.
Well, I just saw that other question about what about people who, colleagues who don't want to connect, and you can feel like you're excluding them, but they don't want to be friends. And that's where I say, like, I think it's really important to respect everyone's differences. We have a person on our team who's super introverted, who does not participate in any of the, things I think are super fun. They don't think it's super fun. And that's totally okay. Like, I have to respect that person's decision, what they're comfortable with, what they want to share. They're very introverted. And so that's how they work. So I think it's really respecting those differences. You can always inquire, like, oh, I noticed you don't come to the events. Is everything okay? Just want to make sure you're invited and you know that you're welcome to come. But if you don't want to come, that's fine as well. And yeah, have those conversations. Again, that's that authentic self.
Oui, donc en fait, la question était des collègues qui ne veulent pas se connecter, des collègues qui ne veulent pas s'impliquer. Par la suite, on va avoir tendance à peut-être arrêter de les inclure dans les choses, puis nécessairement, on va les exclure d'une certaine manière. Donc, Jennifer qui parle que c'est important de respecter les gens, tout en continuant d'offrir des opportunités à ces gens-là de se présenter. because true enough, if they never come and you stop inviting them, then it becomes exclusion. Just the fact that they know that they've invited might be enough, to have them know that they're part of the group, right? But okay. Tammy, did you have anything to add on that particular question?
I think it's connected to some of the answers we already have, because I too have someone on my team that will never turn her video on, but she's one of the ones that will call me on the cell phone because she's comfortable doing it that way. So it is letting people be who they are. And that's one of the Megamo values I learned as a child, letting people be who they are. In our environment, it has to be a professional behavior. That's the only thing I remind myself.
Awesome. This is a really interesting question. I find I show appreciation to colleagues with cards and gifts. Now that we all work from home, that is tricky because I don't know their address. Any tips for showing you care? So I've got a few. Jennifer, I'll let you go first.
Oh, I was just going to say, yeah, I really miss bringing like treats to team meetings and everyone sharing in that. Or if like someone on a different team really helped me out, I'll bring them chocolate or I'll ask them, can I buy you a coffee? Like, so it is harder in this virtual world to do that. And so I tend to just do nice messages, like a really nice email or, I think that's all I do is messages. There's also that hilarious employee appreciation cards that you can find. I don't know if they're the best, but that's another way. You might want to probably just find any card, a virtual card you could do. But yeah, I think asking people for their personal addresses, that's probably too much. But some people, if you're friends and they are open to sharing that, do it. But yeah, I would find virtual kudos to do that.
Totally. Donc, démontrer son appréciation virtuellement, des messages pour démontrer de la reconnaissance. Elle parle aussi de des cartes humoristiques électroniques qu'on peut envoyer à des gens. Tammy, did you have anything to add?
No, I was going to say electronic cards too is certainly the key. And I don't know, like I've received or given a lot more of the instant awards for work, right? But I know because I'm somebody who's bake muffins, or if the team is guts to the ground and I'm bringing coffee for them, and it's something. So I just learned something from Jennifer, something simple as a one-on-one message, just the encouragement, right? So I've learned a lot here today too. I appreciate that.
What's interesting is that the innovation lab where I work at the Quebec Federal Council, we actually just spent some thought on this particular topic. And there's something that's called the 5 languages of appreciation. And when you have a look at them, there's words of affirmation. So that's what Jennifer was just referring to. There's acts of service. So offering help to people. There are people who like receiving gifts. So you've got the e-cards, I've received just a Starbucks gift card by email, that's an option. Receiving gifts, quality time. Quality time is the 4th one. And everyone has their own, out of those 5 languages, everyone has their favorite. Right? It's not always the same. And typically in the office, we did a lot of the, Tim Hortons donuts and coffees and stuff. So we gave gifts, but, some people don't necessarily like gifts. They prefer to have some quality time. And the last one, and this is the one that's impossible to reproduce in a virtual context, it's physical touch, right? So that is, appropriate physical touch is not something that happens so much in the workplace anyway. And so we're calling those other 4 the 4 languages of virtual appreciation. So there are ways that you can show your appreciation for people. Donc, je parlais juste du concept des 5 langues de l'appréciation. Donc, c'est un concept qui existe. Il y en a 4 qui s'appliquent à un contexte virtuel. Donc, les mots d'affirmation, les actes de service, donner des cadeaux et passer du temps de qualité. Donc, c'est 4 options là, qui s'offrent à vous pour reconnaître les gens virtuellement. So, 227 is going to go have a look here. Last question I think is important when we talk about this. Have a mental health challenge. Who should you connect with? And how do you build accommodations in? So we talked about EAP earlier, right? You know, there's always the option of reaching out to colleagues, talking to your managers, right? If it's colleagues, you know, maybe just make sure that they're ready to receive, you know, this, because sometimes, you know, people are not in a right place themselves. And so they're not in a position to be able to support, right? So kind of have to make sure that the person is available to listen. But, you know, there are those resources that are available, and obviously talking to your manager about issues. And I talked earlier, you know, about the necessity of sharing some stuff, at least to be able to develop empathy, you know, with people that are working with you. Tammy and Jennifer, anything you'd like to add?
I don't know. I think as a team lead or a manager or a director, just making it clear to everyone that mental health challenges happen. Everyone is going to probably experience this in their lifetime, and everyone is definitely going to be affected by this in their lifetime. It's normal. There are resources, and yeah, if as a manager, you're open to listening and providing help when you can, but professionals also can provide the really needed services. But just maybe just being open and having those conversations with your team about mental health, so that everyone kind of is on the same page and feels okay to talk about it.
Totally. Tammy?
I just would add that I've taken mental health first aid and need to be updated, but there are training out there so we know what we can and can't do. And there's all kinds that's offered virtually now. So I would recommend the training if someone's not sure. If it is yourself in a mental health challenge, I've been there. I've already shared that with my dad passing and going through grief. And I had to keep talking. That was what worked with me. And there's much more to that, but that's another conversation. So it's keep talking. If it's your team, get the training so you know when and where.
Yeah. Mental Health Commission of Canada has that first aid mental health training. I did it myself. Very interesting stuff. Tammy and Jennifer, thank you so much for being there today. Really interesting conversation we had. And that's all the time we have for today. I want to thank you two panelists. Merci à nos deux panélistes. And thank you, the audience, for joining us. Merci de vous être joints à nous. Donc, see you next October 19th for another Fin Virtual Learning Series event entitled Connecting to Your Organization's Values and Purpose. Se connecter aux valeurs et à la mission de votre organisation. Sur ce, bonne fin de journée.